There was a Korn Ferry study a couple years ago where they interviewed women that had been CEOs in the Fortune 1000, either current or past. And I dug into that one deeply because I got a chance to meet some of those women. Because I was so interested in that psyche. And a couple of things that stood out to me was the majority of those women said they never had their sights set on the CEO. Like they honestly were like, literally, I wanted to excel, I wanted to advance, but sort of the phenomenon I talked about yesterday, there was nothing about that looked particularly appealing. Somebody else had to say to them, you have the potential, this is a reality. And the majority of them were internally groomed, at least right before that position. You know, a lot of them had gone somewhere else and then been there. So I bring that up because planting seeds right now about the possibilities for you and what it takes is really important, and understand a woman's mindset that ultimately has led to getting into, you know, the C-suite. So some other things I think were interesting is that the majority of the women that were in those roles said that they had whether it was a mother or another female early in their life that taught them that ambition is feminine. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's also important role modeling too. You know, we talked about it when you have the pressure for someone that maybe doesn't think about it like that, but also how can you break that pattern too. You know, they also talked about, when you talk about those characteristics and those qualities and how I described yesterday, that like a lot of times the things that we like and we value are a lot different than the leadership archetype you may see right now in the majority of what exists in the world. And more often they described themselves and were described by those that report to them as being more humble than using the word confident. So they really were confident, but it was being more humble. And that the majority of those CEOs really were thirsty for challenge. They loved like something that they were solving that had an impact and a purpose. For sure, they were much more transparent about relying on other people, really appreciating that other people are going to know things and valuing other people's strengths, not the like I win, you know, me by myself kind of mentality. So I think that that continues to be encouraging about the person that we want to be. So with that, politics. This is the icky thing that frustrates everybody, that is just a part of corporate culture, and I don't necessarily believe that it's ever going to not exist, because at the end of the day, it's humans. It's humans interacting with each other, and not everybody is on a quest to evolve themselves and to like learn more about how they can adapt, right? And it all comes down to this intricate system of power within decision making. People trying to make decisions, not having all the information, having their own biases and their own styles. But this is like, I'm going to start with the headline for this whole thing, which is you have to be aware of the politics at your company. You have to look at it like being a cultural anthropologist. So actually understanding it and looking into it doesn't mean you have to lower your standards or your values or yourself or actually play it, but understanding it so you can plan accordingly around it, that awareness will get you through it. And that's how I think that we shift from being so just like icked and frustrated, because what happens is when women avoid it, they self-sabotage, because there is some element of relationships there, and it will impact your work and your work productivity and your focus, because you're so agitated by it. It can really just like piss you off that like someone else is just, you know, butt kissing and they're moving up, or that's all they spend their time on, like putting all the levers in place. So there is a way to build relationships, true influential relationships, while also having high performance and results. There really is. But right now, like, we're in like a time where we have to continue to strive to be like that and get more allies to think like this as well. So, and this idea of multiple managers vying for limited resources, you know, that continues to happen, and people have less and less time and less control over how technology impacts their schedule. So all these things are happening, and not everybody's performing at their best self. So that's the lay of the land. This is becoming politically savvy. So if we were to say, all right, what do we do about this? So the first thing is getting the facts. Don't rely on the hypothesis in your head or what you think. You know, does anybody listen or read Brene Brown?
Yeah.
No? Okay, maybe a couple.
Oh my God, follow her right now.
Brene Brown, B-R-E-N-E. I mean, she's this great Netflix special right now to like catch everybody up in a couple minutes. but she studies shame and resilience. And what's interesting is if you think about those things, she emphasizes when you feel shame and you're kind of dealing with something that's upsetting you, it's because we tell ourselves a story. And that's very helpful in your personal and professional life of like, what story are we telling ourselves? What facts do I actually have? And even as we talked about imposter syndrome, when I go around to the groups that are working on imposter syndrome, if you write down the story that you're telling yourself, it's usually not real. There's usually a way to reframe it right next to it and say like, actually, that's really not who I am or what I'm about. So the first thing is to get the facts. And in my book, chapter 2, there is a section that really digs into this company diagnosis. I'm going to get there after the break later. But part of it is really figuring out power distribution and figuring out the players and understanding this. But again, looking at it like on like this information quest. Second is developing peer allies. Strategic alliances for years has been a researched, proven strategy for helping you navigate the murky waters of politics. So you have somebody else that's also going to advocate for you. It's like having the person that's like your counterpart in a meeting that amplifies your voice. You've heard of things like that. So developing those strategic alliances where you're speaking up for each other, it works. The person that's advocating for you looks selfless and like a team player, but there's cases where you can't always self-promote. So developing peer allies is one of those things. Planning and again, we'll do this a little bit more with a map and a tool, but there's certain situations that are predictable in your business cycle. Maybe it's annual planning, maybe it's like the launch of a specific project where that there's specific meetings that happen, certain players are involved, and really dissecting that to think about, okay, what is everybody's motivations going into that? Thinking about 3 things. So one was when you're thinking about that, actually no, I want to say that before, but anyway, doing the homework, thinking about the personalities of the people that are involved, like I said, thinking about their style, like are they somebody that's more of like an aggressive, assertive, like they're going to just talk over you. Again, thinking about their motivations and thinking about what potentially their priorities are right now, something that they really need that may limit them or may cause them to react in a certain way. So it's just kind of planning for some significant stages. You cannot plan for the day-to-day. Unless there's a regular ongoing meeting. Some people talk about like having like a Monday afternoon marketing meeting that always happens, and that's one where politics and communication pressure is high. So the fourth is it's harder to do than to say it, which is don't make it personal. Well, it's hard to say don't make it personal when it's human beings and it's like how people treat each other. But all the kind of psychological research around that is that if you can find some way to build your resilience, not detach completely, but detach in a way that allows you to keep your own emotions in check to protect yourself, that's going to be the best way to master it. And it's interesting. I sometimes would go back and forth about this piece of advice, but some people have found, and research has proved that, for example, if you don't make eye contact with someone, you're less of connecting with them. So if somebody's really just being fake and false, it's like, I don't want to take away the energy from myself by even looking at this person right now. That's tricky advice, because then it's just I don't know what to do with that, but it comes up over and over again in studies as well of just kind of don't let them take your energy. And that's the part I think about a lot, because there's definitely people that just are energy drainers, and there's people that are energy builders. So this is going to be very personal. You have to start being kind of cognizant of who does give you energy and what types of situations, and then come up with something that can be your trick for it. Maybe it's I don't spend more than X number of minutes with this person, or I know that if I go into a situation with this person, I've got to have a really structured list of what we're going to accomplish and talk about, and I have to kind of talk to them beforehand, but really think strategically about that. And also the piece about making it personal, going back to putting things on paper, something that happened, the way that they did something, And again, the women are prone to overthinking and ruminating so much about that, and it starts early. Young girls are shown to also start this, overthinking about how everybody's thinking about them, what's going on with them, and especially social media is making it worse. So the more that you can figure out which situations make you the most sensitive to that, then we can work on tricks that are personal for you. Leverage your EQ as a compass, emotional quotient. So obviously EQ, like IQ, I believe in women, our sixth sense, right? Isn't there just, we talk about this a lot lately, when there's a person or there's a situation that like the hairs go up or you're like, something feels like this might not work out. This something feels like maybe this isn't going to be my bag. Like there's something going on here. And you really need to jot that down. Okay, sometimes it comes from a place where something similar, a person similar or a situation similar left a scar on us and we had a bad situation. And this person could be different, this situation could be different. So far in my life, I feel like if I write it down when it happens, it's sort of turned out the way that I initially thought, right? But that's where you have to decide what's at stake for that situation, that person. Like, do I still have to go through this, or is this one of these emotional things where I gotta just guard myself? Maybe I don't disclose as much to this person. Maybe I keep them like here at arm's length, or maybe I have to just think more strategically. But don't doubt, what you feel in those situations. And going back to strategic alliances, one of them, we talk about mentors and sponsors and all the other types of relationships. Having a peer ally that is at your level, close enough to your group, is absolutely one of the most important relationships you can have. Somebody that like you can really show alliances with, that you understand the steps to get there and the situations you're going to face, and can talk about feelings that you have or situations. The tricky part with women and studies about women in strategic alliances is doing that without gossiping and ganging up on someone. It's weird that like crossing that threshold, but again, like if we have that sense that someone might, have these characteristics and we're trying to make each other aware of it, just think about how you talk about those situations. But don't limit yourself from having somebody that can be your sounding board. I think it is the same thing. That's like that work alliance, like that partner there, male or female. And even us in like entrepreneurial like roles too. I mean, over the years, there have been specific women in corporate roles that are that for me too. Because I know you can talk about this like the depth of business, but also talk about the other load stuff that comes into play. This I had wanted to share from the survey, which is how much do you feel like you can be transparent about your personal needs in the workplace? I have a couple of these like sneaking in here, but I just thought it was interesting that the majority of you were like kind of in the middle to that 4 range of like, I don't know if I can be completely transparent a little bit. I'm just going to guess maybe some of that has to do with those of you that are on all male teams, or there's something about that connection to this question to the one that was, my team is either more personal life friendly than my company as a whole, or my company as a whole is more personal life friendly than my team. But there's something there that tells me that...
or even what counts as transparency. Is transparency pictures of your loved one on your desk, or is transparency actually putting on the shared calendar the fact that you're going to be out for 2 hours to do something personal? Those are different levels of transparency.
That's very true too. I'm going to skip to this for the last couple minutes. So it's been coming up a lot about having corporate gender fatigue. So men are still less likely to identify gender bias in the workplace, and 1 out of 2 women, but only 1 out of 4 men, think that it's alive and well today. And so I talked about yesterday about the things that men are saying that they don't understand, the ultimate impact of it. And so men are avoiding talking about it, but women are avoiding talking about it too, because they want to be seen as like the great strategist, the great marketer, the great data, analyzer, whatever it is, the thing, like you don't really feel like getting into that women talk, right? But the more that we all avoid having these conversations about situations that give us tension or don't feel fair, we don't work on it. We don't move the needle in the workplace about it. And those subtle forms of discrimination on all sections of intersectionality, whether it's gender, age, race, culture, language, all sorts of things, if you don't talk about it, it doesn't start working itself out. This one, when I sent it to you, so assessing the cultural landscape. So these 4 areas: influence, meetings, execution, recognition. Getting a little bit more granular in your minds about how this stuff happens, again, is very empowering. So under influence, so just think about, like, do people at your company, do they get support for their ideas and their initiatives do they recruit senior leaders? Is that how it works? Like, you have to have somebody in that position, or your peers? Definitely, I've seen differences with different teams. Is it like, if you can get the momentum and get people excited, then they're like, okay, that's how you prove it? Or is it like, no, an executive has to endorse it? Who has the most influence on your team? Is it based on position and level? Is it based on seniority? Is it based on, expertise in the subject matter? Is it based on popularity? They're just like the most likable. Is it the person that, like, they definitely think is the right-hand person, like they're indispensable because they just know all this stuff, like the details again. So just thinking about the influence patterns. Under meetings, the meeting thing is, I'd be curious if anybody has something to say about this, but so many companies are just like, it's just toxic, the meeting culture. It's such a time buster. But our team meetings in your specific group, are they primarily used to discuss and troubleshoot issues? Like, are they used to kind of problem solve? Are they just progress reports, or it's just this? Are they recaps and progress? Like, I gave you some ideas here, but think about, like, really what goes on in your meetings. This is so valuable when you do become a leader, and you are leaders already today, but if you're in situations where you can actually influence a meeting, or you can go to your senior leader and talk to them and say, listen, we should have every so often a meeting that is just a whiteboard meeting, that we're just talking about ideas. We can think about in meetings, how do they share voice? As we talked about, men interrupt women. Introverted leaders, I'm starting to feel like some of you may identify as an introverted leader. And there's a woman I've been working with for a couple of years, Jennifer Conval, that wrote the book, Introverted Leader. And particularly for women, and in those situations where you don't feel like, talking on a call, we talked about Megan, not on the call, but you could talk one-on-one with your boss maybe about something. There's some nuances there to think about, that you aren't set up for success in just traditional meetings. Having more dynamic settings and having a more prescribed template of what those meetings are about beforehand, I think allows for more equity for people to all share. This is how the team meetings are primarily led, and then to execution, it's what seems to be more valuable in getting things done in your team. Is it the deep understanding of the process, or is it a large network of connections? The person that just seems like, they've got more people that will weigh in, and they can use people to get things done. There's no right or wrong here. On that one in particular, it's just understanding that. And then finally, recognition. That is really going to be very much a variable of leadership, right? So I said, how a leader chooses to recognize people, or what skills they think are most valuable, or styles. And there's that dynamic plus the whole company, because I know at BlackRock you've got lots of awards and things and stuff, right? So just thinking about that for yourself. This gives you a roadmap of number one, how to navigate it for your goals, but also what are these things that I think this thing could change a little bit. There's a nudge that I have here. There's something that I could propose that's different. So that's why we want to give those to you after leaving here, so that you can start thinking about your company action plan.